Hello and welcome to High Point Music's Tone Zone. In today's episode I'm going to show you one of my favourite delay pedals and one of the useful and yet sometimes overlooked settings, the ice setting on the Styrymon timeline. Now the ice setting is where we add a harmony to our delay repeats. We've seen this function on the Meris Mercury 7 reverb where we're able to pitch shift the reverb tails. This is a similar style thing, but it's the delay tails that get pitch shifted instead. We can create some pretty cool reverb-like sounds, but as this is a really popular delay setting for most of these multi-style delay pedals now, they are getting a little bit overused or used a little bit with too much setting or too much wet effect in them. So I'm going to show you how to dial in some subtle settings that are really nice but not over the top or out of the box. So I'm going to gloss over most of the amazing features on the Styrymon timeline and just talk specifically about the ice preset. There are a bunch of controls on here that we've got access to just via the front panel, and there are a few menu options as well. At the moment I've got this all kind of turned down so that it's easy enough to follow along. So at the moment this is what it sounds like. We get one repeat and one pitch shifted repeat, which is going down one octave, as you can see here. We can change that repeat and pitch shift through a bunch of options. Go to a major third. We can go up to some detuning options, which gives us a little bit of a chorus effect. Up to major third. The tritone sounded cool before. Some nice moody sounds through all those intervals and up, back to an octave up, which is probably the more common octave setting you're going to use. We also have an octave and a fifth, and two octaves. So obviously not every harmony is going to be usable all of the time. Some of them may only be single note lines or in very sparse parts where there's no other instruments for you to clash with. You'd have to be pretty game to go for some of those other harmonies. Not something I use a lot of. I like a bit of the fifth and I like a bit of the third sound, but generally I stick to one octave down, one octave up, and two octaves up. So we can show you some of those sounds by, we'll start at two octaves. We're going to turn those repeats up, so there's more delays to pitch shift. More level out of that. We've got a filter control here, which is basically a tone control. I don't want a perfect pitch shift. I want a little bit of grit or a little bit of noise there. Just softens the blow of that artificially pitch shifted sound. And then a grit, which is more noise than tone filter. So you can hear the quality starting to degrade. You can hear that decaying a little bit more there. And I've got the modulation turned off, but a little bit of modulation, just nice and slow and not very deep. For effect, I'll turn that up a bit more. Make it a bit more speed. You can hear that a bit more now. Probably over the top for how I would use it, but a little bit of modulation just takes away from the artificial sound of it, makes it a little bit more natural sounding. And then we can step through a couple of other intervals. So let's go back to 1 octave. Go to a 5th. Again, going to be better on single notes. Because on chords, it's certainly not unusable, but it's not something I would probably use. Too many clashes of harmony. So another cool function of this pitch shifting is the detune function. So if we go down to -25 cent, we get more of a modulation kind of sound. So I'm just going to turn that modulation effect up a little bit. We can hear those tails just pitch shifting a tiny little bit. And there's also a 1/2 cent, which, because it's more out of tune, is a little more noticeable to my ears than the 1/4 cent, but it's a very subtle sound. You would have that dialed in pretty leanly. We can change the amount of blend on the timeline. We've got just the delay, or we can shift that to just be the ice. Somewhere in the middle is going to be your happy point. I probably use it from about here through to about here. So I'll go to an interval that's a little bit more usable on a whole chord, to the octave, and that blend. There's a pretty reasonable change there between the two different amounts of mixture. The other way of affecting the pitch shifting control is through the slice, and that's the sample size of the pitch shift. So I've got it on short. Where you can hear that pitch shift is really quick. There's a medium, where it's medium, and then there's a long slice. And you can hear the different layers there. For most quick stuff, I find the short or the medium setting tends to be good for most tempos, and you would only sort of slow it down if you were absolutely sure this was the setting you were using on that particular song, and then you could tune it up a little bit faster. So there you go, that's the quick run through on the different harmonies that I use with the Styrymon timeline. Again, a little bit of filter to just manipulate the tone, and a little bit of grit, a little bit of background noise can really help to take it from a really artificial sounding pitch shift to something more natural or more organic sounding. Usually I would play a harmony if I was going to do anything more than a 5th. So I'm not a big fan of every interval that you can get with this. It would only be really, really sparse points that I think that's useful, but the octave below, 1 octave above, the 5th are all great options for quickly jumping in and getting this kind of sound. It's a really great way to add layers to what you're playing, some harmonies, a little bit of high frequency or lower frequency excitement to just fill out the notes you're playing. And really, if you want those other intervals, just play them with your fingers, and I'd probably set it to an octave above for a little bit of color. It's a really good way to brighten up those repeats rather than have them just decay and be dark like traditional delays. So there you go. That's the Styrymon timeline ice setting. Really, really cool, lots of fun, and I'm sure you will enjoy it too. If you're interested in checking out something like the Styrymon timeline, you can follow the link below to find one. We're going to be doing a lot more videos on this particular product. Although it's not the newest in the range, there's a million sounds in here that can really add to the layers of our guitar tone. So I look forward to showing you those. Don't forget to follow us on social media. If you've got any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can leave them in the comments there or in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.